The British Museum. Sub-Basement 3. Department of Anomalous Antiquities. My name is Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Senior Archivist, Custodian of Restricted Collections. What you are about to hear has been recovered from sealed files, letters, journals, and testimonies once thought too disturbing for public record. Every statement you hear is drawn from Britain's forgotten centuries, the whispered history that hides between faith and fear. These are the National Occult Archives, filed, preserved, never closed. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1247. A classification. Clerical testimony. Date of statement 9th of October 1247. Location Whitby Abbey, Yorkshire. Author Father Edmund Blackwood testimony. Concerning events in the bell tower. A. Father Edmund Blackwood. Do testify about what cannot leave the bell tower. The bell rings each night at the 3rd hour, though no hand touches the rope. I have watched from below with other brothers who heard the same. The sound carries across the moors and wakes the village. We climbed together to find the cause. The rope hung still when we arrived. No wind moved through the tower. The bell remained silent in our presence. We descended, and the ringing began again. This continued for 7 nights. On the 8th night, I climbed alone. I found Brother Thomas standing beneath the bell. He had been taken by fever 3 winters past. His lips moved, but no sound came forth. His hollow eyes looked through me to something beyond. I spoke his name, and he turned away. The bell rang, though he stood motionless. I reached toward him, and my hand passed through only cold air. He faded like morning mist. The ringing stopped. I reported this to the abbot, who blessed the tower. The blessing held for 1 night only. Now Brother Thomas returns each evening. He stands in the same place. His lips move in the same silent pattern. The bell rings at the same hour. I have tried to read his lips. The words appear to be Latin, but not of any prayer I know. Other brothers refuse to climb the tower now. They hear the bell and cross themselves. The village asks why we cannot stop it. I have no answer that brings comfort. Brother Thomas was a faithful man in life. Whatever binds him here came after death. The abbot says we must pray for his release. We have prayed for months. He remains. The bell rings. His lips move. Nothing changes. I fear he will stand in that tower until the stones themselves crumble. Some bindings cannot be broken by prayer alone. Father Edmund Blackwood, Whitby Abbey, Yorkshire. 9th October 1247. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Church records confirm Brother Thomas died in 1244. The bell tower was sealed in 1251 and remains locked. Parish accounts reference unusual bell sounds for decades after the sealing. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 131 2B. Classification Confession record. Date of statement 2nd March 1312. Location Canterbury, Kent. Author Father William de Grey. Confession regarding the crypt. Father William de Grey, do record what dwells beneath our cathedral. The crypt has been part of this holy place for 200 years. We store relics and sacred items in its chambers. 3 days ago, I went below to retrieve vestments for Easter preparations. The candle I carried flickered though no draught moved. I heard breathing that was not my own. The sound came from the darkest corner, where we keep the oldest items. I raised my candle and saw a figure kneeling in prayer. The robes marked him as clergy from long ago. I called out a greeting. He did not acknowledge my presence. I moved closer and realized I could see the wall through his body. Still he prayed with lips moving in silent devotion. I recognized the words as the old Latin spoken before reforms. My hand trembled and wax spilled upon the floor. At this sound, he turned his head. His face held no malice but deep sorrow. He reached one hand toward me. I stepped back and stumbled against the shelves. The candle fell, and darkness consumed everything. I heard his breathing grow closer. Cold surrounded me like winter fog. My prayers came forth in desperate whispers. Light appeared at the crypt entrance where another priest descended. The breathing stopped. When we searched with fresh candles, we found nothing. I told my brother priest what I witnessed. He knew the story I did not. A priest was trapped in the crypt during renovations in the last century. They found his body weeks later kneeling in prayer. He had written prayers on the walls with his own blood until death took him. The writings were scrubbed away, but something of him lingers. I have returned to the crypt each day since. He appears always in the same corner, always kneeling, always praying. I believe he does not know he has died. His devotion binds him to endless prayer. I have tried to speak blessings over the space. He continues unchanged. Some duties extend beyond the grave. Father William de Grey, Canterbury Cathedral, Kent 2nd March, 1312. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Cathedral records show renovations in 1211, with one death listed as unfortunate incident. The crypt was blessed multiple times between 1312 to 1315, suggesting ongoing phenomena. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1358C. Classification: Parish record. Date of statement: 15th June 1358. Location: Bodmin Moor, Cornwall. Author: Father Thomas Penrose. Account of the Hermit Cell 1, Father Thomas Penrose. Do account for what remains in the old Hermit's cell. The cell sits 3 miles from our church upon the barren moor. Brother Anselm lived there for 20 years in holy solitude. He took vows of silence and saw no man save myself, who brought monthly provisions. Last winter I arrived to find him passed from this world. He sat upright in prayer position, perfectly preserved by the cold. We brought his body to consecrated ground and blessed the cell. I thought his story ended there. Shepherds began reporting a light in the cell window after dark. I dismissed this as imagination until I saw it myself. A single candle flame visible from great distance. I walked across the moor to investigate. The door stood open, though I had locked it after removing Brother Anselm. Inside the cell, I found the candle burning on his prayer desk. The room was arranged exactly as he kept it in life. I knew this was impossible, as we had cleared everything. I extinguished the candle and locked the door again. The next night, the light appeared once more. I returned with holy water and blessed items. Again, the candle burned in the empty cell. This time, I remained through the night. At midnight, I heard the door creak. Footsteps crossed the floor, though I saw nothing. The candle was lifted by invisible hands. It moved to the window and stayed there until dawn. At first light, it returned to the desk and extinguished itself. I have witnessed this pattern many nights now. Brother Anselm keeps his vigil still. His vow of silence extends beyond death. He lights his candle each evening. He watches over the moor as he did in life. The shepherds no longer fear the light. They say it guides them home through fog. I believe his devotion was so complete that death could not end it. The cell remains his sacred space. I bring oil for the candle each month as I once brought food. It is always consumed by morning. Some prayers continue forever. Father Thomas Penrose Bodmin Moor, Cornwall, 15th June 1358. Archivist note. Note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, the Hermit's Cell Foundation remains visible on Bodmin Moor. Local folklore mentions Anselm's light, guiding travellers until the 19th century. The site was investigated in 1923 with inconclusive results. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1379D. Classification: Clerical Testimony. Date of statement: 21st November 1379. Location: Durham Cathedral, County Durham. Author: Father Richard Ashby. Testimony of the Chanting Eye. Father Richard Ashby: do testify about the voices that will not cease. Our cathedral holds services at the prescribed hours. We follow the ancient patterns of prayer and song. 6 months ago, we heard additional voices during evening prayer. They sang in harmony with our own, but came from empty air. The chanting matched our words perfectly. It came from high in the vaulted ceiling, where no man stands. We stopped our prayers to listen. The voices continued alone. They sang the old Latin phrases our fathers used. The words were correct, but the melody was older than our current practice. When we resumed our prayer, the voices blended with us again. This has happened each evening since. The bishop came to investigate. He heard the voices himself during Vespers. He ordered the cathedral blessed and prayers said for any trapped souls. The blessings changed nothing. The voices return each night without fail. I have studied our records to understand this. 200 years ago, a choir of monks died when plague swept through Durham. They were singing evening prayer when the sickness took them. The service was never completed. I believe they continue what they began. Their devotion holds them to the task. They do not know 2 centuries have passed. They sing as they did in life. We have tried singing different prayers. The voices adapt and follow our lead. We have tried silence. The voices sing alone until we join them. Some brothers find comfort in this. Others fear we worship alongside the dead. The bishop permits the voices to continue. He says, if spirits must linger, better they linger in prayer. I am less certain. The voices never tire. They never fade. They never miss an evening. What devotion binds so completely that death means nothing? What faith is so strong it echoes through centuries? I pray I never learn the answer through my own experience. Father Richard Ashby, Durham Cathedral, County Durham, 21st November 1379. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Durham Plague. Records from 1179 list numerous monastic deaths. The cathedral's acoustic properties have been studied extensively, though no natural explanation accounts for the described harmonization. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1403E. Classification: Private account. Date of statement: 7th April 1403. Location: Glastonbury Abbey, Somerset. Author: Father John Whitmore. Account of the Library Visitor 1. Father John Whitmore. Do account for the figure in our library. My duty includes maintaining our collection of sacred texts and manuscripts. I work late into evening when the Abbey grows quiet. Last month, I sensed someone watching me. I turned to find a monk standing between the shelves. His habit marked him as Benedictine from earlier times. I asked how I might help him. He said nothing, but pointed to a specific shelf. I looked at the books there. When I turned back, he was gone. I searched the library but found no one. The doors were locked from inside as I always kept them. He appeared again 3 nights later. He stood in the same location. He pointed to the same shelf. This time, I examined the books more carefully. I found a manuscript I had never noticed before. It contained prayers written in a hand from the previous century. The monk nodded when I touched the book. Then he faded away. I showed the manuscript to our abbot. He recognized the handwriting as belonging to Brother Marcus. Brother Marcus had served as librarian 100 years ago. He dedicated his life to preserving our knowledge. His dying wish was that none of the books be lost or forgotten. Now he returns to ensure his work continues. I see him weekly. He always appears near books that need attention. Damaged bindings, faded pages, manuscripts stored incorrectly. He points, and I understand what requires my care. I have begun to thank him when he appears. He never responds but seems satisfied when I correct the issues. Other brothers do not see him. Only those who work with the books witness his presence. I believe he watches over the library still. His purpose did not end with death. The books were his sacred trust. That trust continues. I find comfort in his visits now. He ensures nothing is lost. He maintains his duty across the years. Some callings outlast mortality. Father John Whitmore, Glastonbury Abbey, Somerset 7th, April 1403. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Brother Marcus's service records exist in Abbey documents from 1298, 1303. The manuscript mentioned was acquired by the British Library in 1847, catalogued as Prayers of Unknown Provenance, circa 1300. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1426F. Classification Ecclesiastical Report. Date of statement 30th September 1426. Location York Minster, Yorkshire. Author Father Stephen Blackwell. Report on the confession box. 1. Father Stephen Blackwell. Do report on what happens in the North confession box. We have 4 boxes where the faithful confess their sins. The North box has stood unused for 3 years. Those who enter flee within moments. They speak of a presence listening behind the screen, a presence that is not the priest. I investigated this claim myself. I sat in the confession box and waited. The space grew cold, though it was summer. I heard breathing from the priest's side, though that chamber was empty. A voice whispered in Latin. The words were from the rite of confession, but spoken backwards. I stood to leave. The door would not open. The whispering grew louder. I recited every prayer I knew. The door finally released me. I reported this to the dean. He sent 3 priests to bless the box. They performed the ritual together. That night, I heard screaming from the cathedral. The youngest priest was found inside the north box. He spoke of hands reaching through the screen. Hands that were not flesh but something like smoke. They tried to pull him through to the other side. He fought free and ran. We searched the priest's chamber. We found scratches on the wooden screen. They formed words in Latin. The words said, "I remain." Our records show a priest named Father Paul died in that box 40 years ago. He was hearing confession when his heart failed. The penitent found him slumped in his seat. Father Paul was known for his dedication. He would hear confession for hours without rest. Now he continues his duty. He waits in the box for those who need him. But death has changed him. His presence brings terror instead of comfort. We sealed the north box. We placed a cross upon the door. Still we hear the whispering some nights. Father Paul calls for penitents who will never come. His service has become imprisonment. Father Stephen Blackwell, York Minster, Yorkshire, 30th September 1426. Archivist Vist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. York Minster, records confirm Father Paul's death in 1386. The North Confession box was removed during renovations in 1542, though reports of whispering in that location continued for decades. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1451 1G. Classification Monastery Journal. Date of statement 12th January 1451. Location Fountains Abbey, Yorkshire. Author Father Martin Granger. Journal entry. Regarding the Scriptorium. I, Father Martin Granger, do record what labours in our Scriptorium. The Scriptorium is where we copy sacred texts. 6 monks work there daily with quill and ink. For weeks we have noticed pages completed overnight. Work we left unfinished is found done by morning. The handwriting is beautiful, but not from any current brother. I decided to watch through the night. I hid myself among the shelves at evening prayer. The other monks departed. The room fell silent. At midnight, a figure appeared at the main desk. He wore the habit of our order, but from decades past. He took up a quill and began to write. His movements were slow and practiced. He copied text with perfect precision. I watched for 2 hours. He never paused or looked up. His focus was absolute. I spoke his name, though I did not know it. He did not respond. I approached closer. He had no shadow in the candlelight. I could see through his hand to the page below. Still he wrote. I touched his shoulder. My hand passed through him like morning fog. He faded, but the quill continued moving. It floated above the page, guided by invisible fingers. The writing continued until dawn. At first light, the quill fell. The figure was gone. I examined the completed pages. The work was flawless. I asked our eldest brother about this. He recalled a monk named Brother Lawrence, who served in the Scriptorium 50 years ago. Brother Lawrence vowed to copy the entire Bible before he died. He completed only half before illness took him. He lamented his failure in his final hours. Now he returns to finish what he started. Each night he copies more pages. His ghostly labour continues the sacred work. We have decided not to interfere. The pages he produces are added to our collection. Brother Lawrence serves the Lord still. Death has not released him from his vow. The Scriptorium is his eternal task. Father Martin Granger, Fountains Abbey, Yorkshire, 12th January 1451. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Abbey records list. Brother Lawrence's death in 1401. Several manuscripts from Fountains Abbey contain pages in 2 distinct hands from the same period, lending credence to this account. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1478H. Classification Clerical statement. Date of statement 5th May 1478. Location Winchester Cathedral, Hampshire. Author, Father Robert Finch. Statement about the altar. Why? Father Robert Finch. Do state what happens at our main altar. The altar has served our cathedral for 300 years. We celebrate Mass there each morning. Recently, the altar cloth is disturbed each night. We leave it perfectly arranged. By morning, it is pulled back as if someone has used the altar. Candles are lit, though we extinguish them. Wine appears in the chalice, though we store it locked away. The bread is laid out, though we keep it sealed. It appears someone celebrates Mass in the dark hours. I volunteered to maintain vigil. The bishop granted permission. I concealed myself behind a pillar at midnight. The cathedral was empty and cold. At the 3rd hour, I heard footsteps on stone. A priest emerged from shadows near the altar. His vestments were ancient in style. He moved to the altar with solemn purpose. He began the Latin Mass in the old form. His voice echoed through the vast space. I watched as he performed each ritual precisely. He consecrated the bread and wine. He elevated them toward heaven. He consumed them alone. When finished, he bowed and turned to leave. I stepped from hiding and called to him. He looked at me with hollow eyes. He spoke words I could not understand. They were Latin, but older than I knew. He pointed to the altar, then to himself. He faded like smoke in wind. I examined the altar. The bread was gone. The wine was consumed. The candles burned low. Morning came, and I reported everything. Our scholars researched the incident. They found records of a priest named Father Benedict. He died at this altar during Mass in the year 1178. His last words were a prayer that his service never end. It seems his prayer was answered. He returns each night to celebrate Mass. The ritual continues through centuries. His devotion will not release him. Father Robert Finch, Winchester Cathedral, Hampshire. 5th May, 1478. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Cathedral Archives confirm Father Benedict's death during service in 1178. The altar was replaced in 1489, but reports of nocturnal Mass continued at the new altar's location. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file. NOA 1492. I classification. Testimony. Record date of statement. 18th August, 1492. Location. St. Albans. Abbey, Hertfordshire. Author, Father William Thorne. Testimony concerning the garden. Father William Thorne, do testify about what walks in our monastery garden. The garden provides herbs and vegetables for our kitchen. It has done so for 200 years. Brother Samuel tends it with great care. 3 months ago, he reported seeing a monk working among the plants at dawn. When he approached, the monk vanished. This happened several mornings. Always the same monk, always in the same location, always tending the same herb beds. Brother Samuel asked who worked there before him. I told him of Brother Gregory, who served as gardener for 30 years. Brother Gregory loved the garden more than any place on earth. He spoke to the plants as if they were his children. He died peacefully among his herbs 5 years ago. His last words were concern for the summer harvest. Brother Samuel described the monk he saw. The description matched Brother Gregory perfectly. I went to the garden before dawn to see for myself. The first light showed a figure bent among the herbs. He moved slowly and carefully. He pulled weeds and examined each plant. I called his name. He straightened and turned toward me. His face held deep peace. He smiled and gestured to the flourishing garden. He seemed to ask if I approved of his work. I told him the garden was beautiful. He nodded and returned to his labour. I moved closer. My shadow fell across him. He disappeared in that shadow. The herbs he touched still swayed as if his hands remained upon them. I have seen him many times since. He appears most mornings when mist lies heavy. He works silently among the plants he knew so well. The garden thrives under his continued care. Even in winter, vegetables grow where he walks. Herbs flourish in poor soil. Plants, thought dead, return to life. Brother Samuel no longer fears the visits. He says Brother Gregory teaches him without words. The ghostly monk shows which plants need attention. He indicates where new seeds should go. Brother Samuel follows this guidance and the garden prospers. Death has not ended Brother Gregory's service. The garden remains his sacred trust. He tends it still across the years. Father William Thorne, St Albans Abbey, Hertfordshire, 18th August, 1492. Archivists note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Brother Gregory's death is recorded in 1487. The monastery garden was noted in regional records as exceptionally productive throughout the 1490s, well beyond expected yields for the soil quality. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1515J. Classification: Ecclesiastical account. Date of statement: 3rd February 1515. Location: Exeter Cathedral, Devon. Author: Father Nicholas Gray. Account of the night visitor. Why? Father Nicholas Gray. Do account for who kneels in the Lady Chapel. The Lady Chapel is our most sacred space. We honour the Virgin Mary there with prayers and candles. For 6 months a figure appears there after Compline. She kneels at the altar rail in prayer position. Her head is bowed. Her hands are folded. She wears the dress of a noblewoman from the previous century. I first saw her when closing the cathedral at night. I thought a visitor had hidden to remain after hours. I approached to ask her to leave. She did not acknowledge my words. I touched her shoulder. My hand met only empty air. She continued her prayers unchanged. I stepped back in shock. She remained solid in appearance, but had no substance. I watched her for an hour. She never moved except for lips forming silent prayers. When the cathedral bells rang midnight, she faded. I reported this to the dean, who came to witness. She appeared as I described. The dean recognized her dress as similar to those in old paintings. He searched our records. He found the story of Lady Margaret. Lady Margaret came here 80 years ago seeking forgiveness. Her husband had been taken by another's hand through a political plot. She blamed herself for failing to warn him. She vowed to pray for his soul every night until her own death. She kept this vow for 30 years. She died kneeling in prayer at this very spot. Her last words were that her prayers must continue. Now she returns each night. Her vow did not end with death. She prays for a soul long since at rest. Her penance has become eternal. I have tried to speak blessings over her. She does not respond. I have told her she is forgiven. She continues praying. Whatever binds her is stronger than absolution. The weight of her guilt holds her here. She cannot release herself. She cannot stop her prayers. The Lady Chapel is now her prison. Father Nicholas Gray, Exeter Cathedral, Devon, 3rd February 1515. Archivists note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Cathedral Records, confirm Lady Margaret's Vigil from 1402 to 1432. Her tomb is located near the Lady Chapel. Parish accounts mention the Praying Lady appearing periodically until the chapel's renovation in 1635. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1537K. Classification Private Journal. Date of statement 27th June 1537. Location Rievaulx Abbey, Yorkshire. Author Father Edmund Stone. Journal entry about the cloister walk. Why? Father Edmund Stone. Do record what paces in our cloister. The cloister surrounds our central garden. We walk there in meditation between prayers. It has been a place of peace for 400 years. Now something has changed that peace. Brothers report seeing a monk walking the cloister at night. He moves in an endless circle. His head is bowed. His hands are clasped. He never stops or looks up. Several brothers have tried to speak with him. He does not respond to any greeting. He continues his circular path without pause. If someone blocks his way, he walks through them. The sensation is described as passing through winter fog. I witnessed this myself last evening. I stood in the cloister after Vespers. The walking monk appeared from the eastern passage. He moved with steady mechanical purpose. His face was visible but held no expression. His eyes were open but saw nothing. I spoke the greeting of our order. He gave no sign of hearing. I remained in his path. He walked directly toward me. I felt intense cold as he passed through my body. The cold reached my bones. My breath came out as frost. He continued walking without breaking stride. I turned to follow him. He completed the circuit of the cloister and began again. I counted 20 circuits before midnight. He never slowed or varied his path. At dawn, he faded mid-step. Our eldest brother knows this story. A monk named Brother Dominic was given severe penance 60 years ago. He had broken his vows and sought forgiveness. The abbot ordered him to walk the cloister 1,000 times in prayer. Brother Dominic began his penance faithfully. On the third day, he collapsed from exhaustion. He died without completing his task. Now he walks eternally to fulfill the penance. He has walked far more than 1,000 circuits. Yet he cannot stop. The penance was never officially completed. His soul remains bound to the task. The cloister is his eternal path. Father Edmund Stone, Rievaulx Abbey, Yorkshire, 27th June, 1537. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Abbey, records show disciplinary action against Brother Dominic in 1477. Death recorded during penance. The cloister was partially destroyed during the dissolution, but reports of the walking monk continued at the ruins. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1549L. Classification Clerical report. Date of statement 11th November 1549. Location Tintern Abbey, Monmouthshire. Author Father Peter Vaughan. Report on the Refectory. Why? Father Peter Vaughan do report on events in our dining hall. The Refectory is where our community takes meals together. We observe silence during eating as our rule requires. Last month, the silence was broken by sounds from the empty hall. We heard benches moving and dishes being placed. We heard footsteps on the stone floor. These sounds came at meal times when the refectory was locked. I unlocked the hall to investigate. The benches were arranged as if for dining. Places were set with invisible items. The air held the scent of bread and soup, yet nothing physical was present. I watched that evening at our dinner hour As we ate in our current hall, I heard the sounds again from the old refectory. I went there alone. Through the windows I saw figures seated at tables. They appeared as shadows but moved with purpose. They lifted invisible food. They bowed heads in prayer. They observed our traditions perfectly. I entered the hall. The figures remained visible. None acknowledged my presence. I walked among them. There were perhaps 40 monks seated. All wore our traditional habit. All ate in silence. I recognized none of their faces. Our community now numbers only 12. I realized I witnessed monks from earlier times. The refectory holds memory of countless meals, centuries of brothers gathering in fellowship. Those meals echo still. The space remembers what happened there. When I left the hall, the sounds continued. They lasted exactly 1 hour. Then silence returned. This happens daily now. The old refectory fills with ghostly diners. They maintain the ancient customs. They eat together in holy silence. They give thanks. They depart. The pattern never varies. Our community has dwindled, but theirs remains whole. They are trapped in eternal repetition of daily life. The refectory will not release them. Father Peter Vaughan, Tintern, Abbey, Monmouthshire, 11th November 1549. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Tintern Abbey was dissolved in 1536, though some monks remained on site. The refectory ruins still stand. Visitors in the 19th century reported hearing unexplained sounds at meal times. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1562M. Classification: Personal Testament. Date of statement: 8th March 1562. Location: Wells Cathedral, Somerset. Author: Father James Whitlock. Testament regarding the organ Y. Father James Whitlock. Do testify about music that plays itself. Our cathedral organ is magnificent. It has served our worship for 100 years. Brother Michael was our organist for 3 decades. He played with such skill that angels might weep. His music lifted our prayers to heaven. Last year, Brother Michael passed peacefully in his sleep. We buried him with honours beneath the organ loft. Within days we heard music from the empty loft. The organ played at midnight, though no one sat at the keys. The music was beautiful, but melancholy. It was Brother Michael's favourite hymn. I climbed to the loft to investigate. The organ pipes sounded clearly. The keys moved as if fingers pressed them. Yet no one sat on the bench. I called Brother Michael's name. The music stopped abruptly. Silence held for several moments. Then a single note sounded. It was the first note of our evening prayer. I understood this as communication. Brother Michael remained at his post. I reported this to our bishop. He came to hear for himself. The midnight music played as I described. The bishop watched the keys move with no visible cause. He declared this a mystery beyond our understanding. He permitted the music to continue. Now we hear Brother Michael play each night. The hymns are always sacred. The skill is unmistakable. The passion remains undimmed by death. Some brothers find comfort in the music. Others are frightened by it. I am uncertain which feeling is correct. Brother Michael serves still. His talent could not be buried with his body. The organ remains his instrument. The loft remains his place. His final performance has lasted months and shows no sign of ending. Music was his prayer in life. It continues as his prayer in death. Father James Whitlock, Wells Cathedral, Somerset, 8th March 1562. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Cathedral records confirm Brother Michael's death in 1561 and burial beneath the organ loft. The organ was replaced in 1583, but accounts of phantom music continued at the new instrument. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1578N. Classification Monastery Record. Date of statement 14th July 1578. Location Battle Abbey, East Sussex. Author Father Hugh Marston. Record of the Infirmary. I, Father Hugh Marston, do record what happens in our infirmary. The infirmary treats sick and injured members of our community. Brother Paul served as infirmarian for 20 years. He tended each patient with gentleness and skill. Many brothers survived illness through his devoted care. Brother Paul died last winter during an outbreak of fever. He refused to rest while patients needed him. The sickness took him as he worked. We found him collapsed beside a patient's bed. After his burial, strange events began in the infirmary. Patients reported someone checking on them at night. They felt a hand upon their brow. They heard footsteps between beds. They sensed a presence watching over them. Yet when they opened their eyes, no one was there. The current infirmarian found medicine bottles rearranged each morning. They were organized exactly as Brother Paul preferred. Blankets were adjusted on sleeping patients. Water cups were refilled. These tasks happened when no one was present. I spent a night in the infirmary to observe. At midnight, I heard the door open. Footsteps crossed to the first patient. I saw a shadowy figure lean over the bed. The figure had Brother Paul's distinctive posture. He moved to each bed performing his nightly rounds. He checked each patient with the same careful attention he showed in life. When he reached my bed, I remained still. I felt his hand touch my forehead as if checking for fever. The touch was cold but gentle. He moved on to complete his rounds. At dawn, he was gone. The patients slept better that night than they had in weeks. I believe Brother Paul's sense of duty was so strong that death could not end it. He continues his work from beyond the grave. The infirmary remains his responsibility. His patients remain under his care. This should trouble me, but instead brings strange comfort. The sick are watched over even in the dark hours. No one suffers alone. Brother Paul serves still. Father Hugh Marston, Battle Abbey, East Sussex. 14th July 1578. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Brother Paul's death during the 1577 fever outbreak is documented in Abbey records. The infirmary was converted to other use in 1591, though the building's foundation remains visible at the Abbey ruins. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 15930. Classification Ecclesiastical Journal. Date of statement 22nd October 1593. Location Lindisfarne Priory, Northumberland. Author Father Bernard Carr journal entry about the Seaward Chapel. Father Bernard Carr, do record what appears in the chapel facing the sea. Our priory sits on Holy Island connected to mainland by causeway. The tide covers the causeway twice daily. The Seaward Chapel was built 300 years ago. It honours St. Cuthbert, who found peace in this isolation. 10 years ago, Father Andrew drowned when the tide caught him on the causeway. He had been visiting the mainland for supplies. He misjudged the water's return. His body was found 3 days later. Since his death, the seaward chapel has held a presence. Visitors report seeing a figure kneeling there at dawn. The figure faces the windows overlooking the causeway. He appears to be keeping watch. I have seen him myself many times. He wears our order's habit. His posture is Father Andrew's exactly. When dawn light reaches the windows, he fades. I believe he watches for others who might make his fatal mistake. He keeps vigil over the dangerous crossing. His death taught him the peril of the tides. Now he tries to warn others. Fishermen have reported seeing a light in the chapel before dawn. They say it warns them when the tide is dangerous. They will not cross if they see the light. Several claim this warning saved their lives. The tide here is treacherous and unpredictable. Father Andrew died learning this truth. Now he shares that knowledge. His watch continues through years. His warning light shines still. The chapel has become his eternal post. He guards the causeway he could not survive. Some duties cannot be abandoned. Some lessons must be passed to others. Father Andrew performs this service from death. His failure became his purpose. His tragedy became his mission. The Seaward Chapel holds his endless vigil. Father Bernard Carr, Lindisfarne Priory, Northumberland, 22nd October. 1593. Archivist's Note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Priory. Records confirm Father Andrew's death in 1583. The causeway remains dangerous. Modern visitors still report seeing unexplained lights in the ruined chapel before dawn during high tide. Warnings. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1607P. Classification. Clerical testimony. Date of statement 1st December 1607. Location Peterborough Cathedral, Cambridgeshire. Author Father Thomas Wainwright. Testimony of the burial vault Rievaulx. Father Thomas Wainwright. Do testify about what dwells in our burial vault. The vault beneath the cathedral holds the remains of clergy dating back 3 centuries. It is my duty to maintain this sacred space. I descend weekly to ensure all is in order. Last month I heard someone speaking in the vault. The voice came from deep within where the oldest tombs rest. I followed the sound carrying my lantern. I found a priest kneeling before a stone tomb. He spoke in Latin prayers for the dead. His voice was steady and clear. I greeted him, but he did not pause. I moved closer. My light passed through his body, revealing the wall beyond. Still, he continued his prayers. I recognized the tomb he prayed before. It belonged to Bishop Edward, who died in 1307. The inscription said he was buried with his chaplain, Father Simon. Father Simon had vowed to pray for the bishop's soul daily. I realized the praying priest must be Father Simon. He kept his vow in life for 40 years. Now he keeps it still in death. I return to the vault each week. He was always there at the same tomb, always speaking the same prayers. His devotion has lasted 300 years. I tried to tell him the bishop's soul has long since found peace. He shows no sign of hearing. I attempted blessings to release him. Nothing changed his pattern. Father Simon's dedication has become his prison. The vow that honored his master now traps him. He cannot stop. He cannot leave. His prayers echo endlessly in the darkness. Other spirits may rest in the vault, but only Father Simon remains visible. Only he continues active service. His loyalty was absolute in life. Death made that loyalty eternal. I now leave candles burning near his vigil. It seems small comfort for such devotion. The vault has become his world. His prayers fill the silence. His faith endures beyond all reason. Father Thomas Wainwright, Peterborough, Cathedral, Cambridgeshire, 1st December 1607. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Cathedral records confirm Bishop Edward's death in 1307, with his chaplain Father Simon buried alongside in 1347. The burial vault was sealed in 1643 during Reformation conflicts, but later reopened. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1619Q. Classification Parish account. Date of statement 17th March 1619. Location Haworth, Yorkshire. Author Father Michael Denison. Account of the Moorland Crosswear Father Michael Denison. Do account for the figure at the old cross. 3 miles from our church stands an ancient stone cross. It marks where monks once rested while travelling the moors. The cross has stood there for 500 years. Local shepherds avoid the area after dark. They speak of a monk who appears at the cross. He stands as if waiting for travelling companions. I dismissed these tales as superstition until I witnessed it myself. I was crossing the moor at dusk, returning from a distant farm. I saw a figure standing motionless at the cross. I thought it was a shepherd seeking shelter. I called out in greeting. The figure did not respond. I approached closer. The figure wore monastic robes of ancient style. His hood was raised, concealing his face. I asked if he needed assistance. He turned toward me slowly. Where his face should be was only shadow. No features were visible beneath the hood. He raised one arm and pointed across the moor. The direction led toward our church. He seemed to ask which way to go. I indicated the correct path. He nodded and turned to walk that direction. I followed at a distance. He moved with steady purpose. His feet made no sound on the rocky ground. After 100 yards, he simply vanished. One moment he walked ahead of me. The next he was gone, as if he had never existed. I searched the area thoroughly. There was no place he could have hidden. The moor stretched flat and empty around me. I continued to the church, troubled by what I witnessed. I researched our old records. Centuries ago, monks travelled between abbeys on regular routes. They used the stone crosses as waypoints. One monk was recorded lost in a moorland storm in 1289. He left one abbey heading toward another. He never arrived. His body was never found. I believe he still walks the moor. He still seeks the path he lost. The cross remains his landmark, but he cannot find his way beyond it. He is trapped in that endless journey. Father Michael Denison Haworth, Yorkshire, 17th March 1619. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The stone cross mentioned still stands on Haworth Moor. Regional records mention a monk lost during winter storms in 1289. Hikers have reported seeing hooded figures near the cross as recently as the 1970s. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1634R. Classification Private record. Date of statement 24th August 1634. Location Norwich Cathedral, Norfolk. Author Father David Fletcher. Record of the tower stairs. Why? Father David Fletcher. Do record what climbs our cathedral tower. The tower rises 200 feet above the city. Stairs spiral upward through the stone. It is my duty to ring the bells at appointed hours. I climb these stairs daily and know every step. For months, I have encountered something on the stairs. I hear footsteps ascending. Below me, I hear breathing that grows closer. Yet when I look down, I see no one. The sounds continue past me, continuing upward. I follow them to the bell chamber. The chamber is always empty when I arrive, yet I hear someone there. I hear them move around the bells. I hear them touch the ropes. Sometimes I hear them sigh as if weary from the climb. Then silence falls and I am alone. I reported this to the dean. He suggested my imagination creates these sounds. I insisted he accompany me to witness. We climbed together at evening. Halfway up, we both heard footsteps above us. The dean called out. No answer came. We hurried upward. The bell chamber was empty, but we heard breathing. We heard someone standing beside us. The dean spoke prayers of protection. A cold wind rushed past us, descending the stairs. We heard footsteps going down, though we saw nothing. The dean blessed the tower. That night the bells rang at midnight, though no one climbed to ring them. The sound woke half the city. We rushed to the tower. The ropes swung wildly as if just released. Our research found the story of Brother Timothy. He was bell ringer in the previous century. He climbed these stairs twice daily for 40 years. One morning he collapsed on the stairs. His heart failed during the climb. He died reaching toward the bells above. Now he climbs still. His duty compels him upward. He must ring the bells he never reached. His eternal climb continues through the years. Father David Fletcher, Norwich Cathedral, Norfolk, 24th August, 1634. Archivist's note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Cathedral, records list. Brother Timothy's death on the tower stairs in 1578. The tower was struck by lightning in 1643, damaging the upper levels, but reports of phantom footsteps continued after repairs. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1647, S classification, ecclesiastical statement. Date of statement 6th January 1647. Location Hexham Abbey, Northumberland. Author Father Simon Blackthorne statement about the night stair. I, Father Simon Blackthorne, do state what happens on the night stair. The night stair connects the dormitory to the church. Monks used it for midnight prayers for centuries. It has not been used regularly for decades, yet we hear footsteps on those stairs each night at the midnight hour. The sound is distinct, multiple feet descending in rhythm. It sounds like a procession of monks answering the call to prayer. I positioned myself at the base of the stairs to observe. At midnight, the footsteps began above. I heard them descend steadily. I saw nothing, but the sounds were unmistakable. Each step creaked as if bearing weight. The air grew cold as the sounds passed. I felt presences moving around me. They continued into the church. I followed into the sanctuary. The church was dark and empty, yet I heard the sounds of the community gathering. I heard them take their places in the choir stalls. I heard the rustle of robes and the clearing of throats. Then they began to chant. The voices were many but faint. They sang the midnight office in Latin. The ancient words echoed from every direction. I stood frozen in the darkness listening. The chanting continued for an hour. When it ended, I heard them file out. The footsteps returned up the night stair. At the top, a door closed. Then silence. I lit candles and searched the church. I found no sign anyone had been present. This happens every night without variation. The ghostly community maintains its schedule. They gather for prayers that were said here for hundreds of years. Those prayers created a pattern that persists. The night stare still serves its purpose. The monks still answer the call. Death has not released them from their holy obligation. The midnight office continues. Their voices grow fainter each year but have not ceased. Father Simon Blackthorne, Hexham Abbey, Northumberland, 6th January 1647. Archivists. Note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. The night stare at Hexham dates to the 12th century. The abbey suffered damage during border conflicts, but was partially restored. The night stare remains intact, though no longer used for its original purpose. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1658T. Classification: Clerical Journal. Date of statement: 13th May 1658. Location: Ely Cathedral, Cambridgeshire. Author: Father Jonathan Harding. Journal entry: regarding the chapter house. I, Father Jonathan Harding, do record what assembles in the chapter house. The chapter house is where our community gathers for important decisions. We meet there weekly to discuss Abbey matters. The room has witnessed centuries of such meetings. Recently, we hear voices in the chapter house when it should be empty. The voices sound like heated discussion. They speak in Latin about matters we do not understand. The words are sometimes clear, but often overlapping. It sounds like many men speaking at once. I investigated alone. I opened the chapter house door during these sounds. The room appeared empty, but the voices continued. They came from all around me. Some voices were raised in argument. Others spoke calmly, trying to mediate. I stood in the center of the room listening. The discussion seemed to concern a decision of great importance. Votes were called. I heard responses, though I saw no one. The meeting followed proper procedures. A gavel sounded to close the session. Then silence fell. I researched our archives. 300 years ago, a controversial decision was made in the chapter house. The community was deeply divided. The meeting lasted 3 days. Tempers flared and arguments grew fierce. The final vote was narrow. Several monks left the abbey in protest. The decision haunted the community for years. I believe that meeting never truly ended. The arguments continue. The votes are cast again and again. The conflict cannot be resolved. The monks are trapped in that moment of division. They replay their debate endlessly. They cannot move beyond it. The chapter house holds their unresolved dispute. The room remembers their passion. It echoes their voices still. Current meetings are sometimes disrupted by the sounds. We hear the ghostly arguments beneath our own discussions. It is unsettling to deliberate while the dead debate around us. The past and present occupy the same space. Neither can exclude the other. Father Jonathan Harding, Ely Cathedral, Cambridgeshire, 13th May 1658. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Cathedral records show a contentious chapter meeting in 1358 regarding disputed property rights. The chapter house was renovated in 1672, but acoustic phenomena reportedly continued in the rebuilt structure. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1672U. Classification: Monastery Testament. Date of statement: 29th September 1672. Location: Kirkstall Abbey, Yorkshire. Author: Father Lawrence Ward. Testament of the Abbot's Chambers. Father Lawrence Ward, do testify about events in the former Abbot's Chambers. The chambers have stood empty since our last abbot died 15 years ago. We have no replacement and the rooms remain sealed. Last week I heard sounds from within. Furniture moving, footsteps on wooden floors, a voice speaking quietly. I unlocked the door to investigate. The room was arranged as if recently occupied. The bed was made. Books were placed on the desk. A chair was positioned by the window, yet dust covered everything. No one had entered for years. I heard breathing behind me. I turned to find a figure standing by the desk. He wore the white habit of a Cistercian abbot. His face was that of Abbot William, who died in 1657. He looked at me without recognition. He gestured to the papers on his desk as if showing me something. His lips moved, but no sound came. He appeared frustrated that I did not understand. He pointed to the window, then back to the papers. He seemed to be in the middle of important work. Work that death had interrupted. I spoke his name gently. He looked at me directly for the first time. His expression showed confusion. He looked down at his hands. He seemed to realize slowly that something was wrong. He looked around the room as if seeing it for the first time in years. Then he faded. The furniture returned to its dusty, abandoned state. The papers vanished. The room was empty again. I believe Abbot William did not realize he had died. He continued his daily routine unaware he was gone. Only when confronted did he begin to understand. I have returned several times since. He has not appeared again. Perhaps awareness freed him. Perhaps he finally moved beyond this place. The chambers remain empty now. Father Lawrence Ward, Kirkstall Abbey, Yorkshire. 29th September, 1672. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathanic Ashcroft. Abbot William's death in 1657 is recorded in Abbey documents. Kirkstall Abbey was dissolved in 1539, but some buildings remained in use. The abbot's chambers were demolished in 1720. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1685V. Classification: Personal account. Date of statement: 4th November 1685. Location: Worcester Cathedral, Worcestershire. Author: Father Christopher Ashfield. Account of the Chained Library Y. Father Christopher Ashfield. Do account for what reads in our library. The Cathedral Library contains books dating back centuries. Many are chained to the shelves to prevent theft. It is my honor to serve as librarian. I spend many hours among these precious volumes. For weeks I have sensed I am not alone there. I hear pages turning when I am the only person present. I hear footsteps between the shelves. I hear someone breathing nearby. Yet when I look, I find no one. Yesterday I witnessed something that cannot be easily dismissed. I was working at my desk in late afternoon. The library was quiet and empty. I glanced up and saw a monk standing before the shelves. He held a chained book open in his hands. He was reading with deep concentration. I recognized his habit as being from 2 centuries past. I stood and approached him. He did not look up from his reading. I came within arm's reach. I could see through his body to the books behind him. The book he held was visible and real. His ghostly hands turned solid pages. I read the title over his shoulder. It was a theological text in Latin. He seemed absorbed in a particularly difficult passage. His lips moved slightly as he read. I stepped back and watched for several minutes. He never acknowledged my presence. He seemed completely focused on his study. Eventually, he closed the book carefully. He returned it to its place on the shelf. The chain clinked as he moved it. Then he simply vanished. The book remained where he placed it. I examined the volume. It was a text on church doctrine from the 14th century. Our record showed it was frequently studied by our monks in that era. I believe scholars who devoted their lives to learning still return to continue their studies. Death has not ended their thirst for knowledge. The library draws them back. The books they loved call to them still. They read in death as they did in life. The chained library holds more than books. It holds the echo of every mind that found enlightenment here. Father Christopher, Ashfield, Worcester Cathedral, Worcestershire, 4th November, 1685, Archivist's Note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Worcester's chained library remains one of England's finest medieval collections. Many volumes mentioned in this account survive intact. The library has been studied extensively for both historical and paranormal significance. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1697 W classification. Ecclesiastical record. Date of statement 19th February 1697. Location Byland Abbey, Yorkshire. Author Father Henry Sutton. Record of the Eastern Chapel War. Father Henry Sutton. Do record what happens in the ruined Eastern Chapel. Our abbey has fallen into disrepair since the dissolution. Most buildings are now empty shells open to the sky. The Eastern Chapel lost its roof 50 years ago, yet candles burn there on certain nights. These candles appear without human hand. They burn bright regardless of wind or rain. Local people see the lights and cross themselves. I went to investigate this phenomenon. I arrived at the chapel after dark. 7 candles burned on the altar. The altar itself is crumbled stone. Yet the candles stood upright as if on a proper surface. I approached cautiously. The light revealed a figure kneeling before the altar. He was dressed as a monk of our former community. He prayed with arms outstretched. His voice carried clearly despite having no roof to contain sound. He spoke the evening office in perfect Latin. I listened to his prayers for an hour. He never paused or looked around. His devotion was absolute. When his prayers concluded, he stood. He extinguished each candle carefully. Then he walked toward the eastern wall. He passed through the wall as if it were mist. The chapel returned to darkness. I examined the altar. No wax remained from the candles. No trace of fire marked the stone. Yet I had seen them clearly burning. I researched our old records. Brother Gabriel was the last monk to serve in this chapel. He refused to leave when the abbey was dissolved. He continued his prayers alone for months. Soldiers finally forced him away. He died shortly after in poverty. His last words were a vow that the prayers in this chapel would never cease. He has kept that vow across centuries. He returns to pray as he did in life. The chapel may be ruins, but his faith rebuilds it each night. The candles burn, the prayers rise, the service continues. Stone may crumble, but devotion endures. Father Henry Sutton, Byland Abbey, Yorkshire, 19th February, 1697. Archivist's Note, Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Byland Abbey was dissolved in 1538. Brother Gabriel's resistance is documented in dissolution records. The Eastern Chapel ruins remain. Unexplained. Lights have been photographed there as recently as 2003. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1703 X classification. Clerical testimony. Date of statement 7th July 1703. Location Salisbury Cathedral, Wiltshire. Author Father George Wickham. Testimony regarding the spire. Father George Wickham. Do testify about what climbs our famous spire. Our spire rises 400 feet above the cathedral. It is the tallest in England. Maintenance requires workers to climb to dangerous heights. Last month, a stonemason reported seeing someone on the spire at dawn. The figure climbed the exterior with no rope or safety. The mason called out in warning. The figure continued climbing. The mason hurried to alert others. When we looked, the figure was gone. This happened 3 more times. Always at dawn, always climbing upward. I decided to watch from the ground. I arrived before sunrise and positioned myself with clear view of the spire. As the first light touched the stone, I saw him. A man climbed the narrow maintenance ladder. He wore clothing from the previous century. He climbed with confident, steady movements. He reached the top and stood on the narrow platform. He looked out over the city. He seemed to be inspecting the stonework. I called up to him, though he was far too high to hear. He looked down in my direction. For a moment, our eyes seemed to meet. Then he stepped off the platform. I cried out, expecting him to fall. He simply faded into the morning air. I researched the spire's history. Master builder Robert worked on the spire for 30 years. He climbed it daily to oversee construction and repairs. The spire was his life's work. In 1668, he fell to his death from the top platform. His last words spoken to fellow workers were that he would ensure the spire stood forever. Now he returns to continue his vigil. He climbs to check his creation. He inspects for damage or weakness. His watch has continued for 35 years. The spire remains strong and true. Perhaps his ghostly inspections help maintain it. Perhaps his dedication transcends mortality. He cannot rest while his masterwork requires oversight. The spire remains his responsibility. Death has not released him from his duty. Father George Wickham, Salisbury Cathedral, Wiltshire. 7th July 1703, Archivist's Note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Master Builder. Robert's death in 1668 is recorded in cathedral documents. Salisbury's spire remains the tallest in Britain. Modern construction workers have reported feeling watched while working at heights. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1718Y. Classification Parish Journal. Date of statement 23rd December 1718. Location Rievaulx Abbey, Yorkshire. Author Father Isaac Morehouse. Journal entry about the Christmas Vigil. I, Father Isaac Morehouse, do record what happens on Christmas Eve. The Abbey ruins stand empty most of the year. The roof is gone and walls crumble. But on Christmas Eve, something remarkable occurs. I first witnessed this 3 years ago. I was walking home after midnight service. My path led past the Abbey ruins. I heard singing from within. The voices sang ancient Christmas hymns in Latin. I approached the ruins cautiously. Through the broken walls I saw candlelight. The choir stalls appeared intact and filled with monks. They wore white habits and sang with joyful voices. The altar stood whole, draped with cloths. The scene was the Abbey as it must have been 200 years ago. I stepped through the doorway. Immediately, the vision changed. The walls returned to ruins. The voices faded. Darkness reclaimed the space. I stepped back outside. The singing resumed. The candlelight returned. I remained outside and watched. The Christmas service proceeded in full. A ghostly abbot led the prayers. The community responded in unison. They celebrated as they had in life. At dawn, the service concluded. The monks processed out singing. They faded in the growing light. The ruins stood empty again. I have witnessed this each Christmas since. Always the same service. Always the same joyful songs. The community gathers for one night each year. They celebrate the feast they love most in life. Death has not ended their Christmas observance. The ruins remember their glory. For one night the Abbey lives again. I no longer walk past. I stay and watch from outside. I join my prayers to theirs. Their faith reaches across centuries. Their joy is undiminished. Christmas remains eternal for them. Father Isaac Morehouse, Rievaulx Abbey, Yorkshire, 23rd December, 1718. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Rievaulx Abbey was dissolved in 1538 and extensively damaged. Local tradition speaks of Christmas Eve phenomena continuing to the present day. The ruins are monitored by heritage authorities who note unexplained acoustic reports. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1734Z. Classification: Monastic account. Date of statement: 10th April 1734. Location: Melrose Abbey, Scottish Borders. Author: Father Duncan MacLeod. Account of the heart burial. Father Duncan MacLeod. Do account for the vigil at King Robert's grave. Our abbey holds the heart of Robert the Bruce. It was buried here 400 years ago with great ceremony. A special chapel marks the burial site. For months we have seen a figure kneeling at the grave. He appears at midnight and remains until dawn. He wears armor of ancient design. His head is bowed in prayer or grief. He never moves except to cross himself periodically. I approached him one night. I asked who he was and why he kept this vigil. He did not acknowledge my voice. I walked around him observing. His armor was battle-worn and damaged. His face, though visible, showed no expression. I could see through him to the tomb beyond. I realized he was not truly present, yet his vigil continued regardless. I researched the history of the heart burial. Sir James Douglas carried the heart to the Holy Land. He died in battle before completing his mission. The heart was returned to Scotland and buried here. Several knights who accompanied Douglas also died. One knight named Sir William remained with Douglas until the end. Sir William swore to protect the heart even in death. I believe Sir William keeps his oath still. He stands watch at the tomb. He guards what he could not deliver. His failure in life became his duty in death. He cannot leave his post. He cannot abandon his charge. The heart rests safely in consecrated ground. Yet Sir William maintains his vigil. 4 centuries have not released him. His oath was absolute. Death did not end his obligation. The tomb remains under his protection. He kneels in eternal service. Some vows bind beyond mortality. Father Duncan MacLeod, Melrose Abbey, Scottish Borders, 10th April 1734. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft Robert the Bruce's heart was indeed buried at Melrose in 1330, after Sir James Douglas's death. The heart was rediscovered and reburied in 1996. Abbey visitors continue to report seeing a kneeling figure near the site. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1749AA. Classification. Clerical report. Date of statement 5th August 1749. Location Bolton Priory, Yorkshire. Author Father Samuel Green. Report on the Gatehouse. Father Samuel Green. Do report on events at the Priory Gatehouse. The Gatehouse has stood for 5 centuries. It was the entrance to our monastic community. The gatekeeper's role was to welcome guests and turn away those who meant harm. Brother Peter served as gatekeeper for 40 years. He knew every traveller who passed through. He died at his post 10 years ago. Now visitors report being greeted at the gate, though no one is there. They hear a voice welcoming them. They feel a presence watching as they enter. Some see a figure standing beside the arch. He appears briefly, then vanishes. I stationed myself at the gate to observe. A family approached in late afternoon. I heard a voice call out greeting, though I alone stood there. The family stopped and looked around confused. The father asked who spoke. I said I heard it too. We saw movement in the shadows beneath the arch. A monk stepped forward into the light. He wore our traditional habit. His face was Brother Peter's exactly. He smiled at the visitors. He gestured them welcome. His lips moved in blessing. The family backed away in fear. Brother Peter looked sad. He faded slowly, still gesturing welcome. The family fled. I remained at the gate. Brother Peter appeared again. He looked at me with questioning eyes. I told him gently that he had died. I told him his service was complete. He shook his head. He pointed to the gate. He would not leave his post. I blessed him and released him from his duty. He smiled, but did not depart. The gatehouse remains his responsibility. He greets visitors still. His welcome continues across death. Some duties define us so completely that we cannot exist without them. Father Samuel Green, Bolton Priory, Yorkshire, 5th August, 1749. Archivist. Vist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Bolton Priory's gatehouse remains standing and is now a tourist site. Brother Peter's grave is unmarked, but Priory records confirm his long service. Visitors still report unusual greetings when entering. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1762BB. Classification. Personal testament. Date of statement 16th January 1762. Location Chester Cathedral, Cheshire. Author Father Edward Crowther. Testament of the procession War, Father Edward Crowther. Do testify about the ghostly procession. Each year on the feast of St. Werburgh, we honour our patron saint. The tradition dates back 800 years. We process through the cathedral singing her praises. Last year, during our procession, I saw something extraordinary. As we walked and sang, I noticed additional figures joining us. They wore habits from centuries past. They appeared translucent but clearly visible. They processed alongside our living community. They sang the same hymns in perfect harmony. I looked at my brothers. None seemed to notice the additional participants. I counted perhaps 30 ghostly monks among our 12. They maintained proper formation. They carried candles that gave real light. They showed deep reverence and joy. The procession completed as normal. As we filed out, the ghostly monks remained. They continued processing through the cathedral. They walked the same path again and again. Their voices echoed long after ours ceased. I stayed behind to watch. They processed for hours. Their formation never wavered. Their singing never faltered. At sunset, they faded one by one. The last voice echoed away into silence. This year, I watched specifically for them. They appeared again as before. This time, several of my brothers saw them too. We discussed it quietly after. We realized our annual procession joins with all those who came before. The ghostly monks continue their devotion. They honor Saint Werburgh as they did in life. They appear on her feast day to participate once more. Death has not ended their celebration. The procession includes both living and dead. We walk together briefly. They remind us we are part of something eternal. Our traditions connect us across centuries. The cathedral remembers all who served here. Father Edward Crowther, Chester Cathedral, Cheshire, 16th January 1762. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Chester Cathedral's connection to St. Werburgh dates to the 10th century. The annual feast day procession continues to this day. Multiple accounts over centuries describe similar phenomena during the celebration. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1776 CC. Classification Monastery Journal. Date of statement 22nd September 1776. Location Whitby Abbey, Yorkshire. Author Father Marcus Hartwell. Journal entry about the dormitory. I, Father Marcus Hartwell, do record what sleeps in the old dormitory. The dormitory housed our monastic community for centuries. Now only 3 of us remain. The long chamber holds 20 empty beds. Each night we hear sounds from the dormitory. Breathing as if many men sleep there. Coughing and turning in sleep. The rustle of straw mattresses. These sounds come from beds that hold no one. I entered the dormitory during these sounds. I carried a candle to illuminate the darkness. I saw figures lying in the beds. They appeared as shadows, but with human form. They slept peacefully, unaware of my presence. I counted 17 sleeping forms. I walked between the beds. My footsteps did not wake them. I spoke aloud. None stirred. I reached to touch the nearest figure. My hand passed through cold air. The figure continued sleeping. I realized these were monks who once lived here. They sleep still in death as they did in life. The dormitory remains their resting place. They do not know the Abbey has fallen to ruin. They do not know their brothers are gone. They continue their nightly rest. At dawn they vanish. The beds appear empty again. This pattern has continued for months. Our 3 remaining brothers find comfort in it. We are not alone in this vast building. Our ghostly predecessors share the space. They maintain the old rhythms of monastic life. Sleep and wake. Prayer and work. The pattern continues through them. We sometimes hear them rise at midnight for prayers. We hear footsteps going down to the church. They answer the call that shaped their lives. Death has not changed their discipline. The dormitory remains filled with sleeping monks. Father Marcus Hartwell, Whitby Abbey, Yorkshire, 22nd September 1776. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Whitby Abbey was dissolved in 1539, but some structures remained usable for decades. The dormitory collapsed in 1793. No reports of phenomena exist after the building's destruction. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1783DD. Classification: Clerical account. Date of statement: 7th March 1783. Location: Crowland Abbey, Lincolnshire. Author: Father Benjamin Shaw. Account of the flooded crypt. Why? Father Benjamin Shaw. Do account for what dwells in the water. Our crypt floods regularly when the Fenland rivers rise. Water stands 3 feet deep for weeks at a time. We cannot use the crypt during these floods, yet we hear prayers echoing from below. The words are Latin spoken in the old manner. They come clearly through the locked door. I opened the crypt during one such flood. Water filled the space, making it impassable. Yet I heard the prayers continuing. They came from deep within the flooded chamber. I waded into the cold water. The prayers grew louder as I advanced. I saw a light glowing beneath the surface. I reached down toward it. My hand touched only water. The light remained below, unreachable. The prayers came from that light. I believe a monk drowned here centuries ago. He was trapped when unexpected flooding sealed the crypt. He prayed while the water rose around him. He prayed until he could no longer breathe. Now he prays still beneath the water. His devotion continues in death. The floods do not silence him. He continues what he began. I have heard these prayers during every flood since. Always the same words, always the same underwater light. I cannot reach him to offer comfort. I cannot free him from his prison. The flooded crypt holds him trapped. His prayers rise through the water. They echo in the darkness. They remind us that some voices cannot be drowned. Father Benjamin Shaw, Crowland Abbey, Lincolnshire. 7th March, 1783. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Crowland's Fenland location makes flooding common. Abbey records mention a monk lost during unusual flooding in 1312. The crypt was permanently sealed in 1802 after structural concerns. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1791EE. Classification: Parish record. Date of statement: 14th October 1791. Location: Jedburgh Abbey, Scottish borders. Author: Father Robert Murray. Record of the wounded monk. Why? Father Robert Murray. Do record what appears in the south transept. The abbey suffered damage during border wars centuries ago. The south transept bears marks of violence. Stones are blackened by fire. Walls show where weapons struck. A figure appears there on certain evenings. He stumbles through the transept as if fleeing. He holds his side as if wounded. His habit is torn and stained. His face shows terror and pain. He looks behind him constantly. He reaches the wall and collapses. Then he fades away. This happens repeatedly. Always the same desperate flight. Always ending at the same wall. I researched what occurred here. In 1523, English soldiers attacked the abbey. They set fires and struck down those who resisted. Brother Malcolm attempted to save sacred items. He was wounded while carrying them to safety. He reached the south transept before his strength failed. He died against that wall, still clutching a silver cross. Now he relives his final moments. He flees again and again. He cannot escape his fate. The attack continues eternally for him. He dies repeatedly. The wound never heals. The terror never ends. I have tried to intervene. I have called to him as he runs. He does not hear. I have stood in his path. He passes through me unseeing. He is trapped in that terrible moment. Nothing can reach him. Nothing can stop the cycle. The south transept holds his dying. It replays endlessly. Some violence echoes through time. Father Robert Murray, Jedburgh Abbey, Scottish Borders, 14th October 1791. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Border. Conflicts damaged Jedburgh repeatedly in the 16th century. The 1523 attack is well documented. Brother Malcolm's death is mentioned in contemporary accounts of the raid. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1798FF AM classification. Ecclesiastical statement. Date of statement 3rd May 1798. Location Richmond, Yorkshire. Author Father Thomas Sinclair statement about the Bridge Chapel. I, Father Thomas Sinclair, do state what happens at the Bridge Chapel. Our town bridge has stood for 500 years. A small chapel sits at the centre built for travellers. Priests bless those crossing the river there. The chapel has not served this purpose for a century, yet candles burn in its windows after dark. Travellers report seeing a priest standing at the entrance. He appears to offer blessing to those who pass. His lips move in prayer. His hand makes the sign of the cross. Then he vanishes. I went to the bridge at twilight to observe. A merchant crossed leading his horse. The priest appeared at the chapel doorway. He wore robes from an earlier age. He smiled kindly at the merchant. He raised his hand in blessing. The merchant saw nothing and continued walking. The priest watched him pass with gentle expression. Then he turned and saw me. We regarded each other across the bridge. I raised my hand in greeting. He returned the gesture. I walked toward him. He remained visible as I approached. I spoke, asking his name. His mouth moved, but no sound reached me. The river rushed loudly beneath the bridge. I came within arm's reach. He pointed to the chapel, then to the crossing. He seemed to indicate his duty. I told him his service was no longer needed. He shook his head firmly. He pointed again, to travellers crossing. While we conversed, 3 people passed. He blessed each one, though they saw nothing. His dedication was absolute. I realized he would never leave this post. The bridge was his sacred charge. Travellers were his responsibility. He would bless them eternally. Death had not released him from this calling. I thanked him for his service. He bowed slightly. I left him standing watch. He remains there still. Father Thomas Sinclair, Richmond, Yorkshire, 3rd May 1798. Archivist As's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Richmond's medieval bridge and chapel date to the 14th century. The chapel was deconsecrated in the 1680s. Local tradition speaks of the blessing priest appearing to this day. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1805GG. Classification Monastic Testament. Date of statement 19th November 1805. Location Buildwas Abbey, Shropshire. Author Father William Barrett. Testament of the Chapter Room. Father William Barrett. Do testify about gatherings in the chapter room. The Abbey ruins attract visitors seeking history. I serve as caretaker of the site. The chapter room roof is long gone. Walls remain but hold only sky. Each month on the full moon I hear voices there. The voices discuss Abbey matters. They debate and question in Latin. They follow formal meeting procedures. I entered the ruined room during these voices. The space was empty, yet the discussion continued all around me. I heard a voice call for attention. I heard other voices respond. Documents were read aloud. Votes were called and counted. Business proceeded in orderly fashion. I stood in the center listening. No one acknowledged my presence. The meeting continued for 2 hours. Finally, I heard a closing prayer. The voices faded. Silence returned. This happens each full moon without variation. The ghostly chapter meeting convenes. The dead monks discuss matters long since irrelevant. They govern an abbey that no longer exists. They make decisions that affect no one. Yet they continue their responsibilities. The pattern of monastic life persists. The chapter meeting will not be abandoned. Duty remains even when purpose is lost. I have stopped trying to understand it. I simply accept that some things continue. The meetings will happen whether I witness them or not. The voices will debate under the open sky. The dead will govern their vanished world. Some structures survive only in spirit. Father William Barrett, Buildwas Abbey, Shropshire, 19th November 1805. Archivist's note: Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Buildwas Abbey, was dissolved in 1536. The chapter room remains substantially intact structurally. English Heritage manages the site. No modern reports of phenomena have been officially recorded. End of file. Proceeding to next. Recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA1812HH. Classification. Clerical record. Date of statement 8th February 1812. Location Furness Abbey, Cumbria. Author Father Charles Whitfield. Record of the abbot's burial. I, Father Charles Whitfield, do record events at Abbot Thomas's tomb. Abbot Thomas ruled our community 400 years ago. He was buried with honours beneath the chancel. His tomb is marked with carved stone. For weeks we have heard knocking from below. The sound comes from his burial place. 3 knocks followed by silence. Then 3 more knocks. The pattern repeats for hours. We opened the tomb to investigate. The stone lid required 4 men to move. Inside we found the abbot's remains undisturbed. Everything appeared as it should. We sealed the tomb again. That night the knocking resumed. I kept vigil beside the tomb. At midnight the 3 knocks sounded clearly. They came from within the sealed tomb. I placed my hand on the stone. I felt vibrations with each knock. I spoke asking what was needed. The knocking stopped briefly. Then it resumed more urgently. I could not interpret its meaning. I read prayers over the tomb. The knocking continued through my prayers. I searched our records for explanation. Abbot Thomas died suddenly during evening prayer. He was preparing an important announcement to the community. He never delivered his message. I believe he knocks to gain attention. He has something to communicate. His message was never spoken. It remains trapped within him. He knocks from beyond death trying to be heard, but we cannot understand. We cannot help him deliver his words. His urgency echoes through stone. His frustration pounds eternally. 3 knocks without end. A message that cannot be spoken. Father Charles Whitfield Furness Abbey, Cumbria, 8th February 1812. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft, Abbot. Thomas's death in 1412 is recorded in Abbey documents. His tomb was excavated in 1872 and found intact. The knocking report ceased after the Victorian excavation. End of file. Proceeding to next recovered document. The following document was never intended for public release. Case file NOA 1827II. Classification Private Journal. Date of statement 25th June 1827. Location Shap Abbey, Cumbria. Author Father Daniel Preston. Journal entry about the travelling monk. Father Daniel Preston do record the monk who walks the old road. An ancient path runs past our ruined abbey. Monks once travelled this route between communities. The path is little used now, but we see a solitary monk walking it still. He appears at dawn carrying a simple pack. He walks with purpose toward the north. By mid-morning, he reaches the old boundary stone. There he vanishes. The next dawn, he appears again at the same starting point. He walks the same route. He disappears at the same stone. This happens every day. I have watched him many times. He never varies his path. He never acknowledges observers. He walks alone in silent determination. I positioned myself at the boundary stone. I waited for him to arrive. He appeared from the morning mist walking steadily. I stepped into his path. He walked toward me unseeing. I spoke his name, though I did not know it. He passed through me like cold wind. I turned to watch him. He took 3 more steps and faded. I researched the travelling monks. Brother Philip made regular journeys between abbeys. He carried messages and supplies. In 1537, he set out during winter storms. He never reached his destination. His body was found at the boundary stone. He had frozen during the night. Now he walks eternally. He continues his interrupted journey. Each day he tries again. Each day he fails to pass the boundary. He is trapped in endless repetition. His duty cannot be completed. His journey cannot end. The old road holds him fast. Father Daniel Preston, Shap Abbey, Cumbria, 25th of June, 1827. Archivist's note. Dr. Nathaniel Ashcroft. Shap Abbey. Records mention Brother Philip's death in 1537. The old monastic path is now part of a modern walking trail. Hikers occasionally report seeing a solitary figure in robes at dawn. End of file. Case closed to public record. The original document remains sealed within the vaults of the British Museum. The NOA archive remains committed to documenting phenomena that defy conventional understanding. These cases are submitted for academic review and further investigation. Further access requires written authorization or curiosity strong enough to ignore the warnings. Until next time. These are the National Occult Archives,